One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Welcome in, one and all, to another episode of The Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and Joes. It's a Trey and Garrett show as Mitch is still living it up in the Great White North in Montana, having a great time up there, escaping this Texas heat. And Garrett, it's officially preview season as of Wednesday on The Three Technique. I love it. I love that we're extending preview season out into late June this year. It just makes it feel like the offseason's going by even quicker, and we're going to give these conferences actual extended episodes and looks this year, and I'm loving it so far.
Oh, for sure, yeah, and it's super exciting too because you were saying that like it feels like we're extending it out, but it feels like we're tricking ourselves, and I'm starting to get a little bit of those jitters. Like, wait a minute, it's just around the corner, and I realize, of course, that it's late June, but it feels more like it's right around the corner instead of those dog days of summer, like we so often have to fight through. So it's exciting. I'm glad that we're getting close.
Hey, whatever we got to do to hack our brains, right, at this point in June, there's not a lot of sports on that I really care about. I was just telling you, I'm not a big NBA guy. I know you have some personal connections to the NBA finals, so that's pretty cool, but I'm not a big NBA guy. We got the College World Series final this weekend. Should be really fun with LSU and Coastal Carolina, not to date this episode too much because we do want it to kind of be evergreen throughout the rest of the summer, but man, it feels good to be talking about actual football teams in late June. It feels a lot more fun to me than trying to find a bunch of random episode ideas too.
Well, and it is good to date the episode a little bit because, as soon as we hear the news that like the best player in this conference like tears his ACL, God forbid, but as soon as we hear that, in like 2 weeks that it was like some kind of freak accident, you can go back and say, hey, they didn't even know that Coastal won. They had no idea that Coastal had won the College World Series and pulled off this amazing miracle season, and it was so much fun. See, they couldn't have possibly predicted that would have going to happen. So that's why they said that this one team was going to be as good as they are. It's good to kind of let yourself sit in stone a little bit and say, hey, we are recording this at the end of June. So when the data becomes a little bit dated with some weird stuff towards the beginning of the season, as it so often does, at least we're here.
And we will definitely go back and edit that in post if Goliath is actually able to withstand the stone this time. And
I have a good feeling about Goliath, honestly.
Goliath is the betting favorite, as he typically is. I'm in these situations. Well, I mean, without giving too much away, let's jump right into it. Let's pay a couple bills real quick, Garrett. We do have our partners at Home Field Apparel that even though the season is a few months away still, you can stock up for this season. Summer's a great time to find a new t-shirt, a new look, and your favorite styles are still in stock at Home Field Apparel. All those vintage tees, all those vintage looks, and you can use our code 3TechPod for 15% off your first order. And Garrett, our newest partnership is off and running with our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy are giving the Jimmies and the Joes a chance to get off the sidelines and into the game with up to $1,000 in bonus funds plus a free pick when you sign up and use the code 3TechPod, all one word, as you sign up. Build your lineup simply by picking higher or lower on your favorite projections and win. It's that simple. New players can get up to $1,000 in matching bonus funds and unlock a free pick by using our code. So what are you waiting for? Join us on Underdog Fantasy today and let's party all season long. Underdog Fantasy promotes responsible gaming, must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, and 21 plus in Arizona and Massachusetts, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7-HOPE line at 1-877-HOPE-NY. Or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Join our friends on Underdog Fantasy and get in the game. I'm also doing a little best ball this summer, and it's a lot of fun because you get to set your picks in the summer, not worry about it all year. And if you win, if your lineup wins, you get to watch that flow in. They've got the Best Ball Mania tournament going on right now, Garrett. $25 entry. You can enter, I think, as many times as you want. I'll check that and correct myself it is, but prize pool is 15 mil at the end of the year if you are the lucky winner of that season-long tournament. So a lot of fun. If you love fantasy football, it's a great way to play that as well. But we are a college football show. We'll definitely have some fun picks throughout the season on Underdog. Get our juices flowing a little bit with the best ball. Maybe you're into NBA or NHL, but we'll have a lot of fun picks throughout the season, picking those higher or lower numbers for college football players. And since this is a college football show, let's jump in. If you missed it on Wednesday or back further in our podcast feed, if you're catching up, Mitch had a great Sun Belt preview talking about every single team in the league and making predictions for the Sun Belt, one of the most fun conferences. We've got another fun one tonight, Garrett, as we are previewing the Mountain West Conference. Of course, last year, the Mountain West got to be the first G5 representative in the 12-team playoff when Boise State and Ashton Jeanty just ran wild through everybody, beat UNLV in the final, and earned that 3 seed in the college football playoff. They, of course, ultimately fell to Penn State in that quarterfinal round, but gave them a run for their money and were really, really fun throughout the whole process. So no better place to start, I think, than there with the Broncos. Of course, I mentioned Ashton Jeanty. He made them maybe one of the most fun teams, not just in the country last year, but honestly, Garrett, they were one of my favorite teams to follow ever in my college football fandom, because you were just eagerly anticipating every single night that they took the field. What is Ashton Jeanty going to do? Every single time he touched the ball, he was a threat to bust it wide open and go the distance to the end zone. But of course, now he's off to the NFL. And so the big question, the obvious low-hanging fruit is, what does this post-Jeanty offense look like for the Broncos this year? You had Maddox Madsen emerge last year. Very capable. I think, the term bus driver is thrown around kind of negatively, but that's what he needed to be last year. He drove the bus. He didn't cause problems. He didn't turn the ball over a ton. And, if he can take another step next year, I think that this offense can definitely, they're not going to keep up the same pace they did with Jeanty, obviously, but this is an offense that I think can easily still be one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league, and probably the best in G5 if they're clicking on all cylinders.
They really should be. And I think Maddox Madsen needs a little bit extra props, because I've seen a lot of people use that term, right? Bus driver. And, he was just kind of handing the ball off to Jeanty. And don't get me wrong, like, handing the ball off to Jeanty is a fantastic strategy. So feel free to do that. But there were a couple of moments last season, and I want to try to remember. I know Penn State, he needed to be good in moments. And I want to say maybe against UNLV the first time in the season.
Through a couple picks. Yeah, through a couple picks
of those, but,
in that trip to Las Vegas.
But there were moments where he really needed to be big. It may have been a different one. I can't remember. But there were moments across last season where he had to be big for his team. And he showed up, and he kept them in a game and kept the offense kind of floating, or kept his team close, so that as soon as, Jeanty hit his stride, or as soon as the offense got that balance, things are better. I'm more curious at this point to say, okay, well, what does he look like as the guy in the offense, right? You have to think at this point it's going to be a lot more pass heavy. They got some really good receivers, a couple of guys that you could be really excited about. And I think that's good, but I'm curious to see what it looks like now that he'll be the focal point, that they don't have to put so many guys in the box, that they're not going to be biting on play action quite as much, and it's not to diss on their run game at all. It's just that nobody's going to walk through that door and be Ashton Jeanty, right? This is just not going to happen. And so what does it look like now if you're Maddox Madsen? What does it look like to, be the guy and, make that next step in your offense? He threw for 3,000 yards last season. He had a really good year. It's just going to be, for me, more about, okay, well, what does he do kind of taking that next step as that focal point, and just trying to make sure that he can continue to lead his team when they start to key in on the pass as opposed to keying in on the run.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. I think the passing game, they've got a lot of experience in that wide receiver room. Latrell Caples and Austin Bolt have a combined 11 seasons of college football. So
A lot.
they've been around the block as long as those old guys can still keep up with all the young bucks out there, right? Obviously joking, but a lot of experience. They've got a former 5-star in Chris Marshall in that room as well. He could be a potential breakout candidate. Saw the field a little bit last year, but definitely showed flashes of what he could do. Has the talent if he can just keep his head on straight. I think he's going to be a really awesome candidate for a breakout player on this Broncos team. The running game, I think, obviously you're not going to have Ashton Jeanty, but to quote the overused Moneyball quote, you can try to recreate him in the aggregate, right? You have 3 guys that I think are really talented. You got Sire Gaines, who had 7.8 yards per carry as a true freshman. Jambris Dunbar, who has 5 yards per carry in his career, and they went and got Malik Sherrod from Fresno State, who has 15 touchdowns in his 40-game career. So lots of options. The thing that really held them back last year was the defense at times. They had some pass defense woes at times. They went and got some really nice pieces out of the portal on that. They got a former 4-star corner from Notre Dame, Jaden Mickey. They got Derek Ganter Jr., who was an FCS All-American last year at Eastern Washington. So they're going out and getting some pieces, Garrett, and it's looking like they're not content to be just one and done. Now, I will say, just from a big picture perspective, their over-under is 9.5, I believe. And you'd think that's kind of signaling that Vegas thinks that, hey, they might be taking a little bit of step back. The over is obviously the runaway favorite here at minus 230 as we're recording in late June. You have to really, really get picky to find 3 losses on the schedule for Boise State this year, but I see them as kind of a 10-2 team. I do think right now, as we sit here in June, not sure who it'll come against when the season actually gets here, but I do think they have a solid chance to stub their toes somewhere on this Mountain West schedule. They also have 2 tricky non-conference games at USF to open the year. Happy hour game on Thursday night that I've mentioned multiple times. I can't wait to watch. They host Appalachian State in late September, and they go to Notre Dame the first Saturday in October. That could be a really fun game mid-afternoon in South Bend that's already been locked in for. But I think they do. I think they can win all their non-conference games other than Notre Dame. They could probably give Notre Dame a run for their money because they did give Oregon a run for their money last year.
Yep.
I see this as a 10-2 team. I think they'll be in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. But I do think they lose that Notre Dame game and probably stub their toe at least once in conference play.
It's really hard to say that you could pick them at Notre Dame, right? Like, maybe in some alternate reality where Notre Dame's traveling to go play on the blue turf or something, maybe Boise can pull that one off. But it's hard to say that they could pull that one off in South Bend. I personally, if I was going to pick the second loss somewhere, I'd rather pick it at UNLV as opposed to in another out-of-conference spot. I think that that's probably the other best bet because I think that they're going to be better than the teams that they play in the out-of-conference. And I think that this is a really good team, right? I think that, I was just kind of asking the question, what happens with Maddox Madsen? I think what ends up happening is he takes a massive step in the right direction and cements himself as possibly that next G guy that goes high in the NFL draft, right? Like we've seen several of those guys, that end up going really high that are, not at that Power 5 level. You could think even from the Mountain West, a guy like Josh Allen, like there's good quarterbacks that come out of some of these smaller conferences. He could cement himself as that next guy to go and, be a top 5, top 10 pick in the NFL if he takes that step forward. I think he can. And if I'm a betting guy, I think that he'll probably end up doing that and taking them back to a playoff. But it's really hard for me to judge where I think that second loss will be. If it's anywhere, I'm thinking UNLV.
So I'm hearing we're both taking the over on that 9.5 over under. I think that's obviously Vegas is trying to incentivize the under with the way the line is. So yeah, I think Boise's going to be right back there to tease what we'll talk about at the end of the year. I think they're obviously a championship contender. And I should mention off the top, we are breaking these teams into 3 tiers. We've got conference title contenders, the dark horses, and the teams that are looking for a path to a bowl game, the bowl hopefuls, we'll call them, towards the end of this episode. But Garrett, we got 2 more in this conference title contender tier to join the Broncos. Where do you want to go next?
I'm personally really excited to talk UNLV, and I know that you wrote the preview over it, and so I'm going to let you kind of roll with that for a second. But, man, one quick thing on them before you kind of jump into it. I couldn't be more excited for Dan Mullen getting another shot. Dan Mullen's one of those guys that there's moments where you want to hate the guy, right? And there's some coaches that you really want to hate. I can't do it with Dan Mullen. He's just fun. He's a funny guy. He's just full of weird stuff, and then he pulls it out of his, and he figures out a way to get it done. He's just a good coach. He's developed programs in the SEC up to being contenders. I think he's going to do a really good job with UNLV too. But I'll let you kind of drive it. But I'm just really excited about them.
Yeah, I mean, first, absolutely fantastic hire by UNLV after Barry Odom heads off to Purdue. Got to give Barry Odom his props because he did engineer one of the greatest turnarounds in college football history. Quite frankly, UNLV is historically one of the worst programs in college football. And the fact that we're talking about them in a conference championship tier is just still amazing to me because they've been such an afterthought for so long. So Barry Odom started the rebuild. Dan Mullen really shows that they're committing to the long term, and what they've done in the NIL space, what they've done in investing in the program, and even saying that we want to stick around the Mountain West, I think is a good long-term decision for them right now, as a lot of teams are going to be moving off to the new Pac-12 next year. They've said, hey, we want to be a big player in the Mountain West, and we think that's our best path to the playoff right now, because that's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking, how can we find a way to 3 or 4 wins and not be a complete embarrassment to our university anymore. They're thinking about, how can we find a way to the college football playoff? And Dan Mullen really represents that. But, man, I want this to work and work quickly. What I'm concerned about, and what every preview you read this year will tell you to be concerned about, is that they are 129th in returning production. That's out of 136 teams in the FBS. So this is a team that lost a lot to the transfer portal. They are going to bring in 42 transfers to try and rebuild this quickly. They went to work, and honestly, Garrett, it's a fantastic transfer class. They have 16 former blue chip recruits that are coming out to UNLV. They've got a ton of Power 5 guys. A lot of people bought in. A lot of these players bought into what Dan Mullen and his staff were selling and what UNLV could continue to be. But, of course, what we're going to say all throughout preview season is it's just kind of a crapshoot sometimes if that many transfers can come together and find a way to win. The last time we saw a team kind of do this drastic of a rebuild with the amount of perceived talent they were going to come in, it was when Prime took over Colorado 2 years ago. And they started hot. They had that awesome game against TCU to start off, and then a couple more wins before they fizzled out and went 4-8. So obviously UNLV is not going to have the problems of facing the schedule that Colorado did that year. They had a really tough schedule in that year where they were facing a lot of transition, but that's the cause for pause for me, is so much new talent, so little continuity. But I do really like the pieces. And if they can just find a way to get them all moving in the same direction relatively quickly, I don't see any reason why they won't be right there in the middle of the championship conversation come the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this team. And I think when you have that many new pieces, it can be a big deal to say, like what you just said, which is that, yeah, it could be a disaster. It could be awesome. We don't know. There's a lot of guys, how do they fit together on the field? Are all of them system fits? Are all of them guys that, maybe work together in a locker room? Like, there's all sorts of things that could happen when you bring in that many new players. But I got to say, man, there's just a lot of really cool players that I'm really excited about. I'm excited about the quarterback situation as well, because you kind of have two different guys with Orji and Calandria. You kind of have two different players, right? Like Alex Orji at Michigan, obviously Michigan horrific at trying to pass the football last year.
And I don't think Sharon Moore put him in his position to succeed. No, I think that he is more talented than what we saw him able to do at Michigan last year.
Yeah, it definitely, yeah. And also at a certain point, once you get to a point where you struggle with something, you can start to kind of press a little bit. And I think that's what was happening a lot too, is they were just trying to force the ball down the field where it really didn't belong, because we just got to find a way to pass the football. Lot of failure in the passing game, but for all that he wasn't in the pass game, he can run, and he's a tough guy to bring down. And he's the kind of guy that if you can find a way to run a little bit of that zone read with him, he probably lives in that moment, being able to do that, especially with a very talented running back in that backfield as well. I'm really excited about Calandria. Maybe I'm just, trying to be the, backup envy, sort of like hot take artist for a second, but I think Calandria has a chance to make a little bit of a splash if Alex Orji struggles getting off the ground a little bit. I remember I was watching him a couple years ago when they were playing Maryland, and I remember kind of writing him off because he threw a bunch of picks. And he had a couple good throws, and I remember thinking, there's some arm talent, but a little bit of a new, and we'll see him break in. And then later that year, it was the Duke game, I believe, where he kind of went off and ended up playing a lot better, really slung it. I think he went over 300 yards and really did a lot to kind of show difference. So I, for one, think that Calandria could be a difference maker in the passing game. Now, how much they want to lean on that versus, what does Dan Mullen want to do for his first year kind of running that offense? What kind of system are they running? Time will tell. We'll see. Maybe he's going to run to his personnel. Maybe he's going to try to install his offense. We don't know. But I'm really excited about what this could be. Just the diversity of talent that they have in that quarterback room. I think that they can find something to put out there on the field, keep the chains moving, and score some points.
Yeah, by all accounts, that's still a wide open quarterback battle as we head into fall camp. I think Anthony Calandria is the perfect Dan Mullen system quarterback, honestly, because he's a dual threat guy, can make a lot of plays with his arm. He can make a ton of deep throws.
He kind of looks like Kyle Trask.
A little bit. Yeah, he's got a little bit of Kyle Trask.
Got a little bit of Trask in him.
But yeah, I think that Calandria is a great fit. Alex Orji is kind of a poor man's Dak Prescott if you squint too. When you think about how Dak was early on in his career. So yeah, I think either way they go, I think Dan Mullen is going to be great at orchestrating the offense to whoever's strength. They've got a lot of fun, interesting matchups on the schedule. They host UCLA week 2. They're right in my backyard Friday night of week 1. I might have to sneak over and see them, Garrett. They're at
Sam Houston. Find a way.
It's like a 45-minute. Oh, well, I guess Sam Houston's playing in freaking Houston this year. So, no, I won't be going to downtown Houston to watch that game on a Friday night and trying to battle.
Not on a Friday.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah. Interesting home road splits. They do go to Boise, like we mentioned in the Broncos preview. But other than that, the home road splits are pretty nice. Air Force at home, Utah State and Hawaii at home, a couple of potentially plucky teams that we'll talk about later. So, yeah, I like them to be right there in the thick as long as they can move in the same direction.
I will say little under the radar there if I'm looking at this right. At Miami, Ohio, not going to be a team to roll over. It's they always play good defense. It's on the road. They got they brought in DeQuan Finn to be the quarterback. That's going to be a tough Miami, Ohio team to get out. I think they should win that game though. Like, they're a talented team, and if they can get things clicking, again, maybe not the easiest start to the season, but if they can get things clicking, they'll start to roll and should be a really fun team to watch down the stretch.
I'm really interested to see where they land when the talent composite that always comes out from, I think, CBS Sports. They always put that out around late July, early August. I'm really interested to see where UNLV lands because they're going to be, I think, one of, if not the most talented teams in the G5. Again, it's just...
They'll be up there for sure.
Can they all move in the same direction with that many new pieces that have never played before?
And they brought in Tumishe, right? They got Tumishe on the D-line now.
Yep.
He's a fun
Aggie, and
he's a lot of talent.
Of pieces. They've got some Power 5 dudes on both sides of the line of scrimmage, so that's going to be an advantage in a lot of the games they play. The last team, Garrett, in our contender tier, our true championship contender tier, is the San Jose State Spartans, and they are one of my pet cat teams early on in this preview season. I love what Ken Niumatalolo is doing. Year 2, he was surprisingly successful last year. It was really up in the air how last year was going to go when you think about, obviously, a guy that's run nothing but the option at Navy for his whole head coaching career. He's commits to running an up-tempo spread offense, and he found a quarterback, Garrett, and Walker Eget, and he takes over in the middle of the year. That was a tough coaching decision as well, to bench the previous starter, let Walker take over, but the offense really took off from there, and they found a way to win way more games than most people were expecting. I think a lot of people, quite frankly, were expecting a year 0 for Niumatalolo, but he proved why he is one of the best coaches in the game, getting them to a bowl game last year. So what I really love here is 2 things. They've got a lot of continuity, Like I mentioned, they've got Egett back. He took over midseason last year. He's going to go into his junior year, full offseason as the entrenched starter. They also get back their leading rusher, Floyd Clark IV, and they got a lot of good O-line pieces and defensive starters back. So really that continuity is something we talked about with UNLV. They've got all the talent in the world, it looks like on paper, but never played together as a team. So this continuity, I think, is going to be a really big thing in favor of San Jose State when we're looking at who can join Boise as kind of a co-contender. The receiving core is really where I am nervous for the Spartans because they had Nick Nash, obviously, who was just an absolute legend at San Jose State. Look up his stats if you've never heard of him. He was just goated at the wide receiver position for the Spartans. And they're also losing 5 of their top 7 pass catchers from last year, in addition to Nash. So they went out and got a lot of players in the portal. They got 3 Power 4 guys, Mason Sterling, Leland Smith, and Malachi Riley. So some talented dudes that drew interest from Power 4 programs out of high school. But the receiving core is going to be a work in progress, I think, to start this year. And that's what, as long as they can find that next go-to guy, this is a team that I think can take that next step and be a conference contender. The other thing working for them is the schedule, because they avoid both Boise and UNLV, and the 3 toughest conference games, Hawaii, Air Force, and Fresno State, those are the 3 toughest that it looks like on paper. Those are all going to be at home. So they really, in the conference play, they go to Texas week 2. That's obviously going to be impossible. And they go to Stanford, which I think they could beat the Cardinal. The Cardinal don't look very good.
It's an opportunity to make a splash, yeah.
Absolutely. After that, their next toughest road game is probably at Wyoming, maybe at San Diego State if the Aztecs can get their act together. This is a really manageable schedule, and they might have scheduled their way to a Mountain West Conference championship appearance.
It's a really favorable schedule, and when you have that much continuity, it's a big deal, right? Like it's 3 of 5 on the offensive line coming back, so that's a big deal getting to have that continuity. It's good to be able to bring that back, especially when you have a lot of turnover at the top of this conference, right? Like we were just talking about. UNLV, it's a rotating door of players. We feel good about them, but it is a rotating door of players. Boise State, lots of pieces still in place, but obviously you're losing Ashton Jeanty, so that's a tough thing. Why not San Jose State? Yeah, they're losing, Nick Nash. He's fantastic. But why not, right? Like, why can't they just replace those? It's a lot easier, in my mind, to replace a standout receiver than, like, a standout running back, because just, the quarterback and the receiver tandem, right? If you bring back one or the other, it's a lot easier to replace as opposed to just, something like a running back or like a big-time like corner or something like that, where you have to kind of lock down your position. So I think that they'll be able to find that talent. I think they'll be able to gel. And especially when you can kind of spend your time focusing on that, right? Like as coaches, they don't have to worry as much about all the other pieces. They can worry about the receiver core a little bit, since they don't have to think about all these other groups that are turning over and all that. They can kind of focus on that a little bit more. So I think it'll be good for them. There's moments where I wonder if Ken was sitting there kind of like, hey, why didn't I do this at Navy? Like, why? Like, I understand that
the midship.
Personnel can be difficult and practice times and everything else, but I wonder if there are moments like, hey, wait a second, this thing's pretty cool. I like running like, the up tempo and getting to like throw the ball around a little bit. How about that? And I almost wonder if there was like a moment where he got to like sit back and be like, okay, I could get used to this, forward pass thing.
Yeah, another big boost they had last year was they picked off 21 passes, ton of interceptions.
That'll win you some games.
They had a lot of the secondary, though, get plucked away by some power conference schools. So that secondary is going to be a little bit of a work in progress, too. But probably their 2 biggest portal gets were Caleb Presley from Washington and Malachi Crawford from USC. So those are a couple of big former blue chip recruits that should really help on that back end. But yeah, I'm in on the Spartans, man. I think there's some great value bets here in the preseason lines. They're plus 800 to win the conference. And if you're telling me they've got a good shot to get to the championship game, then that's just one more win they got to get, right?
Yeah.
And the over-under is currently at 7.5. I think that's some good value there when you look at just who they have on the schedule. There's not a lot of games that I am sharping in as a loss. Honestly, Texas is the only one I am sharping as a loss on the schedule. So telling me they just got to find a way to get to 8. I think that's some good odds. I really like that.
It's not unreasonable to say that this team should be 3-1 heading into conference play. I don't think that's unreasonable because, I mean, I don't think Stanford's going to be all that good. And so you tell me that they got a chance to kind of end the state, you're getting to kind of be that team that can go beat a team that's got a little bit of a bigger name, got a better reputation, that could be big on the recruiting trail, that could be big for like perception. You get a chance to go beat a team like that. And then the other two, Central Michigan and Idaho, I feel pretty good about their,
yeah.
I like their chances to beat both of those teams. Yeah, Texas is you're not going to win that game. You're just too good of a team down there in Austin, but you're not going to do it. But yeah, 3-1 going into conference play, and then find a way to kind of split it or find your way towards the top. Like you'll hit 8-4, 9-3.
Well, let's move to our next tier, Garrett. Let's go down to the dark horses. We've got 4 teams in this tier. I'll let you pick the first one that we talk about.
Man, I've got to go with my rebuild team that I got so comfortable with and familiar with last year on College Football 25. I'll talk about Colorado State first. It's a fun team for me. Love everything about the culture, the environment, everything about it. Obviously, losing Torrey Horton this year just sucks. Such a talented wide receiver. Love throwing it to him in College Football 25. It was a lot of fun. Tough to watch him, and also tough last year with him missing so much time to injury and just not really getting to see what that team fully could have been. I think if he was healthy all year, they probably pick up a couple of those extra games and find a way over the finish line, and maybe would have ended up in that title game. And
yeah, I mean, they were one game away from the title game last year. Everybody just kept saying, oh, UNLV and Boise are going to rematch in the title game, but there was little Colorado State just right there. Actually tied UNLV on conference record. They just lost on one of the tiebreakers.
Yeah. And so it's a fun team. I really like the team. Obviously, Braden Fowler-Nicolosi, I think he's a really great quarterback. I think he's an underrated quarterback that not enough people talk about. A little bit of an up and down year last year, but the year before you saw where he could go. Now it's more of is this a regression to the mean, or can he take that next step? I think he's going to take that next step. I think he's a great quarterback, and he's going to keep playing well. For me, it's just going to be if they can find that consistency. A lot of the teams in this dark horse, I feel like, are going to be in that sort of conversation is just, can they be consistent and can they keep it going week to week, right? There were moments last year looking over some of the scores where they scored 30 plus, looked really good. And then they're like against Colorado, they put up 9. Like, you can't do that week in and week out and expect to find large amounts of success. You can't, go put up 17, 21 and then go, okay, we have a good offense, right? Like you can't do that. And so it's, I want to see them be more consistent. I want to see them in those upper 20s on a week in and week out basis. And then I think we can see what Colorado State can do.
Yeah, I mean, we really thought, I think, that the offense would lead the way last year, especially with Torrey Horton, but his injury, like you mentioned, really stymied the offense, and the defense kind of had to lead the way. They gave up just 14.8 points per game during their 5-game win streak to open conference play. And they're setting a firm foundation. I think that was a really high watermark for Jay Norvell, a high watermark for the program last year, winning 8 games. And as long as they can find that new go-to receiving threat, I think the offense can get back up to speed. So find that go-to receiving threat and keep the defense where it was last year, and you're looking at a really solid team. How about some names real quick before we move on, Garrett? Guys that could get that receiving spot. Tell me if you remember these names from recruiting classes of old. Kojo Antwi.
Heard of him, yeah.
Ohio State. He was rumored to be going to Texas A&M at one point. How about Armani Winfield? The guy that
Armani
we kept
Winfield
waiting.
Is a guy I'm really excited about.
Yeah, we just kept waiting for him to do something. It's like that meme where like the guy's just poking it with a stick, right? Like, come on, do something.
Do something.
We thought he was going to be the missing piece to the Baylor offense when he committed there, but both now in Fort Collins, and I think really interesting players. So just quick name to watch on the defensive side of the ball, Jaquez Evans, former Baylor and Western Kentucky edge, balled out at Western Kentucky his first few years of college, and reunites with his old defensive coordinator, Tyson Summers. So he's been injured the last couple of years, but when he's healthy, he can be a force on the defensive line. So I'll keep going here. I'll find our next dark horse. I'm going to talk to you about one of my other pet cats, Garrett. Let's talk about the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors.
Come on now.
If they can just get a couple things to go right, I think this is a team that could really surprise some people last year, but so close to a breakthrough. They were 5-7. They had 3 losses by a combined 7 points last year. And really, we're looking at this offense, I think. And when Chang was hired, when he came in, we really thought that it was just going to be a fun and gun offense, similar to what Timmy actually ran when he was a quarterback at Hawaii. And to an extent, it has been. It just really hasn't been consistent, especially when Hawaii travels to the mainland. Key stat, honestly, for Chang's whole tenure, throughout those 3 years, as he enters year 4, when they go away from Hawaii, when they travel to the mainland, they're averaging just 16.6 points per game offensively. That's got to get better, and I think it will. I'm really excited about Michael Aliato as he takes over the starting quarterback role. He had a strong performance in the last 2 games of the season last year when Braden Shager got hurt. And yeah, here's his numbers in the season finale: 469 yards and 5 touchdowns against New Mexico in the season finale last year. Kid can play. Really excited to see what he can do. And honestly, the defense, it's not ever going to steal the headlines. But Dennis Thurman came in there and turned some things around over the last year. It wasn't elite by any stretch of the imagination, but they've got a few guys. They've got Dejon Benton from USC New Mexico to come over and anchor the defensive line. Keokana, so I'm saying that 5 times fast, comes back home to Hawaii after going off to Utah. So I think the defense could quietly be a lot better this year. So if they can just find some offensive consistency, I trust Timmy Chang to eventually get that down. Year 4 could be the year Hawaii really breaks through and surprises a lot of people.
Well, and the good news is they get a lot of the first half of their schedule at home, right? They play Stanford, Sam Houston, Portland State, Fresno State all at home. They go to Arizona, which, Arizona's not as good as maybe we expect them. I don't think they probably win that game, but they might be able to put up a little fight. Arizona may not.
It's not a scary power conference opponent, though.
Yeah, they're not playing Arizona State. And I know that a bunch of Arizona fans just cussed me out for saying that, but they're not playing Arizona State. And so, yeah, it could be a really fun spot for them. I think that there could be a little bit of a moment to build some momentum, right? Like you could have a little bit of momentum building, maybe go, 4-1, 5-1, and then see what you can do on that back half of the schedule. Couple of tough games on the back half of that schedule, but should be all right, and they should find a way to make a decent season out of it. Curious to see just how good it can be, but they should find a way to build some momentum and make a decent season out of it.
Yeah, the back half is rough. They go to Colorado State, they go to San Jose State, and to UNLV.
Mm-hmm.
But really, they were just so close. They were very close to flipping a few games last year. If they can just get that offensive consistency, man, I think we're partying in Honolulu and probably hosting the Hawaii Bowl this year.
And it would be fun if they started like legitimately getting on TV more instead of just finding like the super late night slots or whatever. Like if they were getting carved out times from TVs that wanted to put them on TV, it'd be a lot of fun.
Hey, we got a CBS primetime spot for week 0 against Stanford. So there's one out of the way.
We're excited.
And TNT, it looks like they're going to be on TNT when they travel to Arizona week 2 or week 1. So there you go. A couple national.
Hope it shows up in the quad box, right?
All right, where do you want to go for the rest of our next, I should say, dark horse contender?
I think it's the team that's probably at this point earned us just giving them a little benefit of the doubt. I'm talking Fresno State. I think they get a little benefit of the doubt. Yes, obviously with like Tedford stepping down, that was, how do you save your season at that point when you're that late into the summer, your coach steps down for his medical issues and you got to scramble to find a way to put the program together, have a season. 6-6, hats off. We'll clap. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Over the years, Fresno State has proven they're a good program, and I think that they've proven that they deserve a little benefit of the doubt as they're getting back up off the mat with this one. I've got a quarterback battle to watch, obviously, so that could be a fun and exciting one to look at. And I think this is one of those teams where it might be a prove-it-to-me type of team. Like, yeah, I don't know that I totally believe, but I'll let you prove it to me. But I'm going to give them a little benefit of the doubt, whether that's earned or deserved or, if there's other Mountain West fans that want to, tell me that I'm just giving them credit because I've seen them be good in the past. I'm just going to say what my eyes have shown me. My eyes have shown me that Fresno State's been good in the past. and that they're probably not falling off of a cliff as a program just because of one kind of difficult year. So excited to see where they go this year. Definitely think the dark horses in sort of middle of that conference pack is where they belong going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think they nailed the hire with Matt Entz.
Yeah.
That's the guy that won a couple of national titles at North Dakota State, spent last year at USC on Lincoln Riley's staff for some reason. Not really sure why he did that, but,
That's
you know,
weird
to
move.
each their own. And the last few teams that have hired from North Dakota State have really not regretted that decision, right? Craig Bowl was hired away to go to Wyoming, and Chris Kleiman at Kansas State obviously has been a really successful coach there. Matt Entz is probably going to be the next in the line of coaches that transition for North Dakota State, even though he took a year off. So loved the hire. You mentioned the quarterback battle, E.J. Warner, the Rice transfer versus Carson Conklin from Sac State. Conklin put up some nice stats at Sac State at the FCS level. So I think that's going to be really interesting. Key stat, though, another team that's just going to deal with a lot of turnover because they had 11 all Mountain West Conference players last year, and just one of those is back. How about the all-name team, Alzillion Hampton?
Come on now.
The lone returnee from the all Mountain West performers last year. But yeah, buy some stock in Fresno State. It might be a little low right now, but I think Matt Entz is definitely going to be turning that program around and getting it back towards the top of the league way quicker than not. The last team in this tier here is the Air Force Falcons. And if you remember me last year, I unfortunately was clowned multiple times for believing in our troops. I will always salute the troops. I will always stand with our troops. And, you know, I believed in Troy Calhoun, and I believed that he, no matter how much roster experience he was losing, no matter how much he was, you know, going to have to deal with turnover, I believe that he could overcome that, and the Air Force Falcons would be right back towards the top. You can just set it and forget it. They're going to win at least 8 games. That's not exactly what happened. They really struggled. They actually lost their first 7 games that they played against FBS opponents last year, so they started 1-7. But they really turned it around. It was an awful start. They turned it around, though, and they wheeled off 4 straight wins to finish 5-7. So they missed a bowl, but those wins are giving you really high confidence for the future. Now, they lost a lot again last year, unfortunately. The key stat last year was 42 players made their first career start last year. 42 different players made their first career start for Air Force last year, or first career college football start, because Air Force doesn't take any transfers, I believe. So, yeah, it was almost impossible battle. A lot of those players are back, but they did lose the guy they thought was going to be the quarterback in Quentin Hayes. So he emerged towards the end of last year. Apparently he graduated and decided to give up football. I'm not 100% sure on that story, but he was only listed as a sophomore last year. So not honestly sure what happened. The beat writers I was reading previewing spring ball were not sure what was going on, and the Air Force was being pretty tight-lipped about it. So
just a quiet guy.
Just a quiet guy, I guess. Maybe Quentin's out serving our country now as an Air Force.
He might have been needed elsewhere if you've been paying attention to current events.
Honestly, it might have been needed elsewhere. So, yeah, he's probably on to bigger and better things than playing quarterback for his college football team. But they will have to figure out who's going to run that offense. They do have the top 5 backs from last year, led by fullback Dylan Carson. Got a solid core along the offensive line, and the defense got better as the year went on. So I think they can kind of start building back to that. I think last year that 5-7 is going to end up being a low watermark, and they'll start building back to towards the top of the league here in 2025.
And the big thing is the 4 wins at the end of the season, right? And there are some pretty significant ones. I had to do a little double take. Shutting out Oregon State.
It was shocking.
Not a small thing.
I mean, they were sitting there at 1-7. Heading into
they had just beaten Fresno State, so 2-7 to give them some
2-7.
But
they lost to Army 20-3. Just didn't look competitive. 1-7. Yeah. They find a way to beat Fresno State at home,
which is also a little shocking too.
Yeah, I mean the only Nevada and San Diego State were bottom of the barrel teams in the Mountain
Right.
West last year. So that's not that shocking, but they're both on the road and they were both,
Yeah.
20 dominant defensive performances that were not the case early in the season.
Yep.
Air Force was handing out 30 and 40 burgers like it was candy at the beginning of the season. So yeah, I mean, this is a team that I think is going to kind of not regress to the mean, but you're the math teacher. What does it mean when you go up to the mean? What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. That's probably still
Ascend?
some form.
Ascend
Ascend would
to
be
the
the
mean?
word, I guess. I don't know if there's it's been a while since I've taken statistics, but
there we go. Well, they're going to
hear
ascend.
a regression, but I don't know if there's a regression upwards.
Positive regression. How about that? How about that for
could
an
be.
oxymoron?
There we go.
Yeah, I think they're going to be closer to their
Progression?
mean this year, is what I'm trying to say. So
Let's spend
That's
more
our-
time thinking of the word. Let's do
let's
that.
workshop this live on air. Let's not. Let's move on to the bowl hopefuls, Garrett. And we've got the rest of the league here. So if you're good at math like Garrett is, there's 12 teams in the league, and we talked about 7. So that means there's 5 here in this last bowl hopeful tier. These are all teams that have a brand new coach this year or a second year coach. So still trying to find some foundation. Where do you want to go to start us off?
Boy, well, just on location, I'd say San Diego State, but I don't know that any of these teams are really drawing a lot of inspiration for me. That's the hard thing about having first and second year head coaches, right? It's that for a lot of these teams, we're going to go up and down. We're going to say, hey, they weren't very good last year, but they got a new coach, so maybe, or maybe it's a good coach that's leaving, so you got more questions. There's opportunities here for any of these teams to kind of take a step. If I'd almost be curious about this, if you were going to pick one of these 5 teams to overachieve and shock us, like, hey, this is a team that, there's not a really good reason to believe in them now, but if everything clicks just right, this would be the team that I'd pick to ascend, jump, pull a UNLV type of thing. Which of these teams down here at the bottom do you think would be one of those teams?
Wyoming is tempting for me to say that, and they have the highest over under at 5.5 of any of these teams. So Vegas really sees them as a borderline bowl team. I really don't think any of these teams are capable of going all the way to the championship like UNLV did a couple years ago, shockingly. Right. But Wyoming has always thrived as a half team. And, if the offense, it doesn't need to be elite, man. If it could just be a little better, we're talking about a team that's easily in a bowl game. Instead of going 3-9 last year, they lost a game 17-13 to Idaho, lost 27-24 to a bottom feeder San Jose State team, 24-14 to San Jose State, 24-10 to Colorado State, 17-13 to Boise. So, we're not asking you to go out there and put up 40 points a game. We're just asking you to be average and let your defense do the work, because the defense was fine. So if the offense can just catch up to the defense, I think Wyoming can be a really solid team. I'll cheat here, Garrett, and give you another one.
Okay.
Coaching wise, Bronco Mendenhall coming home to Utah State
is
really intriguing to me, man. Bronco Mendenhall can coach some ball. We saw what he did when he was at BYU, of course, the first time he was up in Utah. I saw what he did at Virginia, making them competitive in the ACC. Heck, he took New Mexico from a wasteland to 5-7 last year and on the verge of a bowl. So
yeah,
I think he's got some fun pieces. Bryson Barnes, as bad as he was at Utah, showed a lot of promise at this level last year. Showed that he really worked on some things and was looking like a different player going down to the Mountain West and playing that level of competition. Sometimes that's all some players need. Some players are just Mountain West players, and Bryson Barnes.
And he had some success. I want to give him his props a little bit. He beat USC on a little bit of hero ball.
That's true. Yeah, he did.
He was always capable. The Utah offense struggled mightily without Cam Rising the last several years. So I don't want to give him too much hate, especially when you saw what Utah put on the field last year in terms of quarterback. So give him a little bit of due. Okay, it is what it is. I get it. He struggled in spots, and there were definitely places where you probably want to see him do a little bit more. I think Utah State's perfect for him. I think it's right change of speed. I think it's going to be really good.
Yeah, I mean, Utah State, we talked about Wyoming winning with defense and needing just enough offense. Utah State, I think, is going to be the exact opposite. They lost Mendenhall's teams, I should say. Their offensive have always been pretty good, but they also lost 8 defensive starters from last year. So
yeah,
they're trying to fill holes with JUCO players. We don't really see that a ton anymore
not
at
a
the
whole
high
bunch.
major level. Yeah, I think they're going to win a lot of shootouts if they're winning games this year. But those are the two that really stick out to me in this tier as having something to point at and probably a calling card that says, hey, we're really good at this, whether it's coaching for Utah State or the defense for Wyoming. We have something to fall back on that's going to cause us to win some games if we can just be average elsewhere.
Yeah. I'll tell you a team I feel a little bit bad for just kind of looking over the schedule. It is New Mexico.
Dude,
I know
they got hosed.
I know you mentioned them getting pulled out of the wasteland, which I know is only commentary on Albuquerque, New Mexico.
That's right.
It's just a minor commentary there. No, it's all good. I have a grandparents that lived in Albuquerque, so I got a little bit of love for you over there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But no, schedule for them pretty tough at Michigan and at UCLA out of conference. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, the good teams, you can just go down the road at San Jose State, at Boise State, at UNLV, at Air Force. Colorado State is at home. But yeah, just a tough scene to play.
5 of the top 6 betting
teams.
favorites, if you look at FanDuel right now. So
Yeah.
they were the designated whipping boy from the conference office, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And they don't have Devin Dampier anymore.
Yeah.
48 players left in the transfer portal after Mendenhall left for Utah State. It's Jason Eck, good hire. I really like that hire. He had Idaho in the FCS playoffs in all 3 of his seasons there, and before that they hadn't played postseason football since they remember the FBS. So, yeah, I think that's a really good hire, a guy that knows how to win at a difficult place, but he's going to have an uphill battle year one, that's for sure. Yeah, so a couple other teams to talk about here in this tier. We've got 2 left. Let's go to San Diego State. You teased it off the top, but I like what you said because it's a desirable place, right? There's really, really no excuse for the results that we've seen from the Aztecs these last few years. 3-9 in Sean Lewis's first year, and that comes after Brady Hoke just literally ran the offense into the ground the last couple of years that he was there. So this is a program that is way, way more proud than what we've seen on the field last year. I think Sean Lewis is a really good coach. They've got Bert Emanuel Jr. and Jaden Denegal coming in to battle for the quarterback position. Both guys from Michigan colleges, Central Michigan and Michigan. But they might have the best individual player in the conference this year, Garrett. Last year, that obviously would have gone to Ashton Genty. But if you haven't heard the name Trey White for San Diego State, let me introduce you to him. He surprisingly stayed. I think he could have gone a lot of different places to play out what will likely be his last season of college football before he goes on to the NFL. 40 solo tackles last year, 60 total tackles, 19 tackles for loss, and 12 and a half sacks for
That's pretty
Trey
good.
White last year.
That's
Those
pretty
are good numbers. I don't care who your competition is.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's stuck. And it's not to, denigrate San Diego State in any way, but it's really tough to get those high-level talented players to stick on teams that maybe struggle a little bit, maybe are rebuilding or in a tough spot. It's really hard to get those high-level players to stick. The fact that he's coming back is going to give them a lot of reasons to hope on that defensive side.
Yeah. I think defensively they can build around him and have some success there. Got to get the offense figured out, obviously. But Sean Lewis is a really solid offensive coach, and he proved that he could win at a place like Kent State. So I think it's a matter of time. Last team we'll talk about here is Nevada. Went 3-9 last year, but they gave 2 playoff teams in SMU and Boise absolutely all they could handle when they played them. It's going to be a rough season, though, I think, for Jeff Choate year 2. They've got to commit to him for the long haul if they want him to turn this thing around, because they're going to have over 50 new players. I wrote in the preview article that it's hard to even come up with words to write about a team that has 50 new players. That's going to be almost half the roster is brand new, never played with each other. So Chuba Purdy is one piece of continuity that's here from last year. He's looking like the starting quarterback. Numbers aren't great, to be quite honest, but he did have the highest completion percentage of his career last year. So we'll latch onto that for some hope. But again, just like New Mexico, the conference office really did Nevada absolutely no favors to try to schedule them a few wins potentially. They play Boise State. They play San Jose State, both of them at home. They do have UNLV at home as well. So they play the top three, but all at home. And their road games are really tricky at Fresno State, at Utah State, two tough environments, and at Wyoming, the highest elevation in college football, famously. So outside of that, I mean, if you want something a little tougher, you could go to Penn State week 1. And
yeah, nothing too bad about that.
Potentially the number 1 team in the country in the preseason.
Look, I guess they're hoping that they can keep the little theme of giving playoff teams everything they want and more. Otherwise, I mean, yeah, it's probably a nice paycheck. So
you gotta hope you put that right into the house settlement fund there and just cash that check and move on. And hopefully, hey, maybe when you get back to Reno, go put it on the roulette table and see if you can double or triple it. Right?
Could you imagine getting back with your paycheck from Penn State and then losing it all in Reno?
And you're not even in Vegas.
And
I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to be positive on preview shows.
Then you got to go back and look at your team and say, hey, you know how we went up there and got, like, I don't know, whooped by a whole bunch. Maybe they'll keep it close. I don't know. But, you know, we just got our tails kicked.
That's close against SMU when no one expects it to.
The check.
Hopefully they don't do that. Hopefully Jeff Choate is...
Hopefully they keep it close. It'd be a lot of fun to watch that game as, like, a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. That'd be a lot of fun for a little
Penn State is no stranger to games that should not be close being extremely close. If you remember Bowling Green last year, I could probably keep naming the USC game really had no business being close for them last year. That one went to overtime. So, I mean, Penn State, no stranger to close games against teams that are overmatched. But I think that they'll have that one in the bag. Garrett, that's the Mountain West. A fun league. Let's get out of here on this. Who do you have? Obviously, only Sunbelt still does things the right way and has divisions, but who do you have facing off in the conference title game as we sit here in late June, and who takes home the conference title and has a shot at going to the playoff?
I think I'm going to go a little bit boring. I think it's probably going to be Boise State and UNLV as the matchup there. But let's keep it a little bit spicier. Let's call the Dan Mullen first-year conference championship. Why not, right? We'll say that by that point, all the pieces are clicking. They figured out their quarterback spot. They got probably the best running back in the conference. Let's let it rock.
I think UNLV is going to be a great team this year. I think they might struggle out of the gate, and so they might take a loss that keeps them out of that conference championship game if they're not fully functional by late September, early October. So for that reason, and because of the schedule that we're talking about, I'm going to take Boise State and San Jose State to make it to the conference championship game. I think Ken Niumatalolo gets the Spartans there in year 2, but I do think Boise State ultimately wins the conference championship. I'll be even more boring, Garrett. I'll take the heavily favored Broncos to bring home the conference title. That's it. That's the Mountain West. We have 3 more G5 previews for you coming up in the next couple weeks. We've got CUSA, I think, coming out on Monday. Mitch will be back for that one. We've got some fun announcements and giveaways. So stay tuned for that one on our social channels. Make sure you're following along at 3TechPod on Instagram and Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss a single piece of content this preview season. And we'll make it through the rest of this offseason together. Looking forward to 2025. For that man, Mr. Garrett Turney, I am Trey Reeves from Mitch Mason, who will be back next time. So long, everybody.
Gracious him. How about